everybody, it's Annie from Vintage Lace Journal, and here I am again with another Tag Time Tuesday. So last week was my first Tag Time Tuesday, and today we are here with this little beauty. Now this is a design I saw on Pinterest and thought, wow, I'd love to have a go at that. So I made my own measurements and made it my own, changed a few things, and here we go. So it is a tag. It's got a little hole in the top there for you to put it in, to attach it to things. And then this part here pulls out, and that's a journaling card. You can obviously cover that with something on the back. And then inside I've got a lovely image as well. So there's an image on the inside of this and on the journaling card as well. So it looks beautiful once the card is out as well as it's in. And on the front, I've just used this lovely wood paper. I found a beautiful pack with all these different types of wood papers. And I've just added all these flowers to the front. Now, obviously, again, like I always say, make it your own, decorate it with the papers and things that you have. But that is what we are making today. So here we go with what we need to do. So I've used, again, Kraft cardstock on here. I find brown cardstock quite easy to use. So I'm going to come in with one sheet of A4 Kraft card. And I'm going to cut this into 6 by 6. So 6 inches across by 6 inches down. And as always, I will put the measurements for this underneath, so you can do this in your own time, as and when you wish. So once you've got your card carved in size 6 by 6, I'm going to fold that in half. You can score if you wanted to, but I'm just going to eyeball this. Just make sure you line up your corners. And then just give that a really good burnish so it sits nice and flat. Okay, so once we have that, I'm then going to bring in my paper that I've chosen to use. Now again, I'm going to use another piece of wood paper. This one's a more rustic looking wood. I'm going to cut this 5 3/4 by 2 3/4. So 5 3/4. Just need to make sure I'm getting that the right way around, because I want this to be like that way. I need to cut it 2 3/4, because obviously if I did it that way, it would have come down. So I'm going to cut that at 2 3/4 that way. Oh, that lovely sits on that drawing. And 5 3/4 this way. There we go. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to glue that piece of paper to the front of my card. And as you can see, the way I've cut this, it leaves a little border all the way around. And before I glue it, I'm going to cut my corners, because this is looking like a tag. I need to cut these corners here and here and do the same on my piece of paper. So I'm going to bring in my card that I used. So I made one of these to mitre the corners nice and easy. So line up the side, line up the top, and cut, and then turn it over to do exactly the same on the other side. So lining that up. This is also now covered in glue from when I do masterboards and things. There we go. Okay, and that gives me the same corners on either side. I'm then going to bring the paper in. Now I don't use this again, because otherwise it will make the corners too big. What I do is I line the piece of paper up on here, so it's in the centre. So I've got the same gap either side. Turn it over so the top is lined up, and I then cut those there. And I find that actually sits on there perfectly. Now before I put this piece of card down, I am going to ink it just to make it stand out from that card a little bit more. So I'm going to use Distress ink, which is tea dye. And I'm just going to darken up the edges of this card. Doesn't look like it's making much of a difference at the minute, but it will once it sits back on the card, hopefully. I'm wondering actually whether I might bring a bit of black. No, there's a difference there now, it's fine. So the next thing I'm going to do is to stick that down. I'm just using Collal all-purpose glue. Making sure to obviously get the glue nice up to your edges so this doesn't lift. And what I do when I put it down is give it a little bit of a wiggle, just to disperse that glue across the paper. Okay, and give that a really good push down. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to die cut a hole in the middle of here. Now I tried to do this with a hole punch, but obviously because it comes up to a certain point here, it wasn't central, okay, because this is so wide. So I am going to die cut it using just a circle. So I'm going to place it in the middle, run it through my die cutting machine. Now, if you don't have a die cutting machine or any dies, what you can do is find something circular to draw around, okay, and then if you poke a hole in the middle and cut from the outside and round, you can cut a hole. Okay, so if you don't have a die cutting machine, that is one way around this. So I'm just going to pop this through my die cutting machine and I'll be back. Okay, so this has been run through my die cutting machine. Obviously it's only gone through the top layer. We don't want to go through both layers. So just bear that in mind when you're cutting. It's just the top layer you're cutting out, not the bottom as well. So that has created our little window. Now I have decided that I am going to go with some ink. Because this is brown, it doesn't really show up very well. So I'm just going to put a very tiny little bit of black inking around the edges. Not loads, but just to take away that kind of plain, boring brown. And then again in the middle, so bring my acrylic block and just come from the inside out, just to lift that brown. That's a bit better, it shows up a bit better now. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is, before we glue this shut to make our tag side part, I'm actually going to put an image on the inside. Okay, so like I did on this one, you have an image on your card that goes in, but you also have an image on the inside of here as well. So the next thing I'm going to do is find an image that's going to go onto there. And again, I'm just going to use this paper pad I've got. And I'm quite liking these images, so just make sure it's not too wide. Obviously I'm going to trim it down anyway, so it doesn't really matter, and make sure that it fits in with the colours on the front. So I quite like these roses here because I think they'd go quite nicely there. So I'm just going to cut this out. There we go. And just line it up before you... see now that's sticking out the side, so I just need to trim a little bit more off that inside edge. So I've always checked before I glue down. That looks about right now. And I'm just going to make sure that that's being glued in the right place. Yep, so I'm happy with that there. So I'm just going to draw a little mark up the top, so I know that's obviously when I come to glue that, that's where I'm going to put my paper up to. So again, just here with my Collal glue. And then going up to that line. And double checking. Perfect. Happy with that. There we go. So I'm now going to glue down the edges that I'm going to close this. So because the tag is going to be closed at the top bit, I'm going to glue the inside edges here, here and here, but only down to this section here. You don't want to glue any further because obviously that's where your card is going to come in and out. And then I'm going to place glue along the bottom. Okay, so I'm using my fine liner because it gives me a more precision glue. So along the top. And this is tacky glue, so it's going to dry quite quickly. So just down to that part there, don't glue that, that's your opening. And then along the bottom, there. Okay, and then just hold those shut. Because it's tacky glue, it should take quite quickly. Also, a quick tip is when you're gluing things for a pocket, if you push them in slightly as you're gluing it like that, you do get this little lip that will help you get things in and out. Okay, so as you're gluing that bit down, just slightly push it in with your fingers. Not enough so obviously you can see the underneath, but that kind of just lifts it. So there we have the basis of our tag. At this point, if you want to put anything on the back, any papers on the back, you can do that now. I've decided not to do that to mine because I'm not sure whether I'm going to put them in journals or I want to write on the back of them. So I actually left that blank. Sometimes we cover too much things up with paper, I think, and actually, you know, this could be a really good journaling spot about a day you've had out. So yeah, I'm leaving that blank. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little tab for the top. Now, I don't have a tab maker. There's certain dies you can have that do this. So what I'm going to do is with some of my paper offcuts I've got here. So that's roughly about an inch. Okay, so I'm going to fold this over. So that's inch 2 is 2 inches. Okay, so I'm going to fold that over like that. And make sure it's straight and burnish that crease at the top. And then I'm just going to cut that so it's the same size. Okay, so now I've got like a little book, little tiny little tab. Now what I'm going to do with that is like I have on this one here, I'm just going to bring in my card. I've got a large one, a small one, medium and a little tiny one here. So I'm just going to very quickly bring that over to the corner and snip, turn it over to do the same on this side. Okay, so I've made my own little tab top there. That's not quite the same. I'm just going to cut a bit more of that one. I don't think I quite had that down the edge. Then I'm just going to come in with my ink again. And ink on both sides. So the next thing I'm going to do is attach this to the top. Now I use an eyelet. I got these off Amazon. Fantastic these. I'm going to link these in the description below. You get a whole load of these and they weren't that expensive either. So I'm going to use the gold ones this time. I used silver on the last project because it lent itself to blue and silver. This is brown, so obviously I like to use gold. Now, I'm not going to try and cut all these layers at once. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put it where I want it on top of the tab. And where that mitered edge is where you kind of like sit it at the top. Okay, so where that point comes down, that's where I sit it. So that both points come down onto this flat edge here. Okay, I'm now going to get a pointy tool or something sharp. And I'm going to think about where I want my eyelet to be. Okay, so it's central. And I'm going to push through the top layer and into the card. Now what that does is it gives me a little hole on here and a little hole on here, just there. Okay, and that shows me where I need to punch my hole. If I tried to punch all of that together, it wouldn't work. Okay, so unless you've got a really, really sharp hole punch. I still use my ancient old belt hole punch, does a job. So punch a hole in there. And then where I've got my dot where I marked in here, punch my hole in there. Now that way, when I come to line these up, I've cut through them all quite easily, and I can now pop my eyelet in. Okay, so that made it a lot easier just to try and go through 2 pieces of card rather than all 4. And then just set my eyelet. There we go. So that's created our little tab at the top. So I'm going to put this to one side at the moment because we're going to go on to moving on to making our tag for this now. Now the tag measures 4.5 inches. And again, I've cut this from Kraft cardstock. So 4.5 inches down and 2 3/4 wide. Okay, then what I did as I did before is I've rounded the corners on that, and then all I've done with my tag insert is just gone a little bit either way. The trouble is these tags are slightly wide, smaller one way than the other, so we've got a larger gap at the top than the bottom, but I really don't mind that at all. I'm not overly bothered about that. Okay, just ink around the edges again on here. And just lifting the edges on here as well. There we go. So then I'm just going to attach that down with some glue. I'll actually do that way. There we go. Just make sure that your border at the top is the same, roughly the same as your border at the bottom, and the borders at that side. So although they're larger at the top and the bottom, it doesn't really make that much difference. Now again on this one I'm going to create a little tab like I did on this one. So I've got my image in the middle. I'm going to do exactly the same process with this tab as I just did with the top tab for the other one. So get a piece of craft card, fold it in half, and then burnish. Bring in my little card marker. Snip and snip. Give it a quick ink. Now this is going to go on the edge because obviously this is going to be pulled out from this side. So pop that onto there. Again, line up my tab. Mark with a pokey tool. And then cut one. On this side I can't see where it's gone on the paper. 2. Bring them together and pop in your eyelet. If you don't have eyelets or a machine to do this, you can just glue this tab on. So just put a bit of glue all the way over this side and all the way over that side, and then push it, and that will adhere it to the actual card. So again, if you don't have eyelets, there's always a way around things to make it your own. Just making sure that's lined up. There we go. So that's going to pop itself in there. And then we've got that beautiful image on the outside and a beautiful image on the inside. Again, writing on the back there, writing on the back of there. Now the last thing I'm going to do is just to decorate this. And I've got these little paper blossom packs. This came from my local range store, my favourite place to be. And I thought these just look quite nice with their colourings. with the browns and things. So again, just lay them up however you want. I think I'm going to do a bigger one there. So pop some glue in the centre. Always line up so you've got the alternating edges there. Just hold that down for a second. Then pop some glue on the back. And then I think I'm going to do a slightly bigger one there. Let's have a little play around, see what fits, what goes. Happy with that. And I might just do another little one in there. This is what I always say the fun part of crafting, is making it the more trickier part, and then coming in to decorate, it's the fun part. Just be careful when you're gluing, obviously, that you don't glue onto this section here, because obviously that bit will be hard to pull out if that's glued on. You can overlap, but just make sure you glue's down on the bottom part. I think these paper flowers are quite cheap. I think they're only £1, £2 at the most. On there. I might just have a dark one on its own, because I will put some things in the middle of these. There we go. So that's all my flowers on the outside. So I've got a big tray of all my bling gems. I think I'm going to put some nice little pearls in those. I wonder if they'll get lost. Let's have a little look. So these come up on, you pull them, they come up on a string, like a string of pearls together. So if you just nip in either side of where that glue is, that then makes them become single ones. This is where I'm all fingers and thumbs. Gone quiet, concentrating. There we go. Some flowers. And what I might just do as well is just dot round some. I've got these little pearls. These are like acetate dots. I'm trying to think what colour would go. I think that one's quite nice, quite a pale colour, but just adds a little bit more interest and a bit more texture to the tag. And the last thing I'm going to do is just get a little quote up here. So I've got a sheet of these ones, can't remember where these was from now, and I'm going to put one just at the top. This is my biggest dream, to be your inspiration. Being able to inspire people on a platform is just fantastic, and getting people to create and make their own things. This little nail art. There we go, I'm happy with that. And then obviously our little tag pulls out. You can journal on the back, and then I've got a beautiful tag in there. There's a pocket holder as well. So that's the same kind of journaling tag for our Tag Time Tuesday. Different colours, different themes, same principle. So once you know how to make something like this, you can make it your own. You can make them in bold, colourful colours. You can use whatever you like. So I hope you've enjoyed today's tutorial. Please give me a like if you like my tutorial. Please leave a comment. I love reading your comments and answering back. So that's great if you do that. And I'll see you again, hopefully before next Tag Time Tuesday. I've been so busy with Junk Journal July. If you go onto my shorts, there's lots and lots of videos about what I've been doing up to there as well. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.